Have we seen the last of Byron Buxton as a Minnesota Twin? Despite him repeatedly saying that he is not waiving his no trade clause, Cory Provus was recently on Hot Mic with Dom Izzo and had an interesting comment. Now, before I read the comment, I just want to make sure that you know that this is just pure speculation on Provus's part. This is no inside information. But in part, Provus said, I think if Pablo gets traded, then the likelihood of Buxton coming back drops considerably. That's on my mind a lot. I'm kind of watching, these games here this weekend. I can't help but think in the back of my mind if this is the last time we're going to see him as a Twin. And I think he has a pretty valid point here. And we are going to discuss the implications of this both from Byron Buxton's perspective and the Minnesota Twins' perspective. First, let's look at Byron Buxton, and let's just take a second to acknowledge the season that he had. Take away everything that we know about his past and the injuries and the hope that we've had and all of that. Take all of that away. And he had an incredible season for the Minnesota Twins, just continuing the organization's rich history of having all-star, really superstar caliber center fielders that produce both defensively and offensively. Now, in 2025 specifically, Byron Buxton had the healthiest year of his career. He had the best, most productive year of his career. And that says a lot considering everything that went on around him. That included 97 runs scored, 83 runs batted in, 35 home runs, 24 stolen bases, and an OPS of 878, which was an OPS plus of 136, meaning that he was 36% better than the average player in baseball. And he did all that while playing in a career high 126 games, which in modern day standards, that's nearly full time. And what's even more encouraging is that he played very few games as a designated hitter. So that was largely in center field. And the time that he did miss were mostly fluke accidents. There wasn't really any soft tissue injuries. And specifically, there weren't any soft tissue injuries to his lower half, which has been his biggest issue throughout his career. So from his perspective, a lot of respect that he has said so far that he would like to stay loyal to the Twins, but you really can't blame him. I mean, to be frank, the Pohlads don't deserve his loyalty. And so if they continue, if the Pohlads order Falvey to kind of continue the fire sale and they deal Pablo Lopez, maybe even Joe Ryan, then you can't blame him for wanting to be traded away. He's 32 years old. He's still in his prime, but he's definitely on the back end of his prime. And just given his injury history and the fact that he relies on so much speed, he's probably going to start declining sooner rather than later. In fact, you might look at some of his defensive metrics in particular and say that while he still is a pretty elite center fielder, he's no longer at the top of his career when it comes to his defense. Not this what you can say for his offense, and that gives teams a lot of intrigue. He's on a pretty team-friendly contract, especially if he can stay healthy, and especially if he can produce at the levels he did in 2025, and he's controllable through 2029. So again, from his perspective, huge kudos for staying loyal to an organization that really hasn't been loyal to him. And I would not blame him at all if he wanted to move on to have a chance at a title. I don't know if that's in the cards for him with the Minnesota Twins. But speaking of the Minnesota Twins, let's look at their perspective. So for the Minnesota Twins, obviously they are in, again, a massive fire sale. And so if we are worried about dollars and cents, which we're not, but the Pohlads are, then it makes all the sense in the world to trade Buxton. While he is on a team-friendly contract, $15 million is still a large number to have on the books. And so if you're going to deal Pablo and you're going to deal Buxton, you might as well take advantage of probably the highest value that Buxton will have moving forward. Again, 32 years old, he'll probably start declining a little bit quicker than the average player. And so his value is only going to decline from there. But again, given his contract, given the controllability, given the fact that he is still producing at elite rates, at least in the short term, the return that the Minnesota Twins could get would be phenomenal. Of course, it would all be based on prospects, but he would net an incredible prospect return on the trade market. And I would imagine that nearly every contender would be a suitor for his services. And so for the Minnesota Twins, if they are going to fire sale and Buxton is willing to waive his no trade clause, it makes all the sense in the world for the Twins to make that move now. And again, that's all with just the premise that the Pohlads are not willing to invest in the club in 2026 and maybe even beyond that. So what do you think? Should Buxton waive his no trade clause, or should he stick with the Twins? And if you're the Twins, how quickly are you trying to trade him if he does waive his no trade clause, just given the season he's had and the value that he could bring back? Keep an eye out this offseason for more articles related to the fire sale and the Minnesota Twins at twinsdaily.com.